Hollywood is no stranger to scandal, but few stories are as gripping as the betrayal between Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor. When a best friend's affair with her husband made headlines, Debbie Reynolds faced public humiliation. Yet, against all odds, she found the strength to forgive. How did Debbie find it in her heart to forgive? Let's explore this emotional journey of love, betrayal, and the power of forgiveness. The glittering friendship. In the 1950s, Hollywood saw the rise of two iconic actresses, Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor. Their careers began to blossom around the same time, and they quickly became close friends. Debbie, born Mary Frances Reynolds, was a wholesome girl-next-door type who captured hearts with her role in Singin' in the Rain in 1952. Elizabeth, already a child star from National Velvet, was known for her striking beauty and intense performances in films like Giant and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Their friendship flourished in the glamorous world of Hollywood. They attended events together, shared laughs at parties, and supported each other's careers. In interviews, both spoke highly of their bond. Debbie once said, "Elizabeth and I were as close as two friends could be in this town." Elizabeth echoed these sentiments, calling Debbie a dear friend. Their connection was solidified by shared experiences. In 1955, both starred in significant films, Debbie in Hit the Deck and Elizabeth in Giant. They often found themselves on the same social circuit, attending the same parties and events. This frequent interaction strengthened their bond. At the time, Hollywood was a small world, and their paths crossed regularly, further solidifying their friendship. Their camaraderie extended beyond the silver screen. They spent holidays together and often visited each other's homes. Debbie's daughter, Carrie Fisher, later recalled how Elizabeth would bring lavish gifts and how their families seemed inseparable. The two families shared dinners, celebrations, and vacations, creating memories that seemed indestructible. Eddie Fisher, the dream husband. A pop sensation of the 1950s, Eddie Fisher became one of the most celebrated crooners of his time. Born Edwin John Fisher on August 10, 1928, in Philadelphia, his smooth voice and boy-next-door charm quickly catapulted him to fame. By the early 1950s, he had a string of hits, including Wish You Were Here and I'm Walking Behind You, making him one of the era's biggest stars. In 1955, Eddie married Debbie Reynolds in a highly publicized wedding. The ceremony took place on September 26, 1955, at the B'nai Israel Synagogue in Bronx, New York, attracting widespread media attention. Their marriage was seen as a union of two Hollywood sweethearts. Debbie, adored for her role in Singin' in the Rain, was the perfect match for Eddie, whose singing career was at its peak. The couple became a beloved Hollywood pair, often photographed at glamorous events and social gatherings. Debbie later recounted, "We were America's sweethearts. People wanted to believe in our fairy tale. The public admired their wholesome image, and their relationship was frequently highlighted in magazines and newspapers." In 1956, the couple welcomed their first child, Carrie Frances Fisher, born on October 21, 1956. Carrie would later become famous in her own right as an actress and writer. Their second child, Todd Emanuel Fisher, was born on February 24, 1958. The family was often depicted as the ideal American family, living a life of luxury and happiness in Hollywood. Eddie's career continued to thrive, with successful television shows like The Eddie Fisher Show and numerous concert tours. He was a regular guest on popular programs like The Ed Sullivan Show and The Perry Como Show. His popularity seemed unshakable, and his marriage to Debbie only enhanced his public appeal. Despite the friendly facade, cracks began to appear in their seemingly perfect marriage. Eddie's demanding career often kept him away from home, creating strains in their relationship. Debbie, juggling her career and motherhood, struggled with the pressures of being in the spotlight. She later admitted, "It was hard. Eddie was always on the road and I was trying to balance everything." In 1958, Eddie Fisher's marriage faced a major challenge when his close friend Mike Todd, Elizabeth Taylor's third husband, died in a plane crash. Elizabeth, who was pregnant at the time, was devastated. Eddie offered her comfort, and they grew closer, eventually developing a romantic relationship. Initially hidden, their affair soon became public, shocking the world and destroying Eddie's image as the perfect husband. The tragic loss of Mike Todd. On March 22, 1958, the glamorous world of Hollywood was struck by tragedy. Mike Todd, a legendary film producer known for his larger-than-life personality and ambitious projects, died in a plane crash. Mike, born Avram Hirsch Goldbogen, was Elizabeth Taylor's third husband and one of the most influential figures in her life. His death left Elizabeth devastated and vulnerable. Their marriage had been a passionate and high-profile union. They married on February 2, 1957, in Acapulco, Mexico, with Elizabeth wearing a striking green dress. Their wedding was a media sensation, with every detail covered by the press. Mike, who produced the Oscar-winning film Around the World in 80 Days, was known for his flamboyant style and grand gestures, which matched Elizabeth's own star power. The couple's life together was filled with lavish parties, luxurious travel, and public declarations of love. Elizabeth often spoke of Mike as her true love, describing him as her lover, husband, and king. Their bond was evident to all who knew them, making Mike's sudden death all the more heartbreaking. On that fateful day in March 1958, Mike Todd was traveling on his private plane, the Lucky Liz, named after her. The plane crashed near Grants, New Mexico, killing all 4 people on board. Elizabeth, who was supposed to be on the flight but stayed home due to a cold, was shattered by the news. Her grief was profound and she struggled to cope with the loss. Eddie Fisher, already a close friend of both Elizabeth and Mike, stepped in to offer comfort and support. Eddie and Mike had been friends for years, often seen together at Hollywood events. Eddie's role in Elizabeth's life became more significant after Mike's death. He provided a shoulder to cry on, offering emotional support during her darkest days. Debbie Reynolds, who was also grieving for Mike, felt torn. She understood her pain and supported her as much as possible, despite sensing the growing bond between her husband and her best friend. She later recalled, "I was trying to be there for Elizabeth while dealing with my own loss. It was a difficult time for all of us." As Elizabeth mourned, her dependence on Eddie deepened. He spent countless hours with her, trying to fill the void left by Mike's absence. This period of intense emotional connection laid the groundwork for the affair that would soon follow. The media closely followed Elizabeth's mourning period, with tabloids publishing stories about her grief and Eddie's supportive role. Speculations began to surface about the nature of their relationship, but most dismissed them as baseless rumors. However, the seeds of betrayal had already been sown. The scandalous affair. The affair between Eddie Fisher and Elizabeth Taylor shocked Hollywood. Initially, Eddie offered her support after Mike Todd's death, but their relationship quickly became a scandalous romance. The public had adored Eddie and Debbie Reynolds as the perfect couple, making the betrayal even more sensational. As Elizabeth grieved, Eddie's frequent visits to her home raised suspicions. Behind closed doors, their relationship turned romantic, with Eddie captivated by Elizabeth's beauty and vulnerability. Debbie Reynolds, sensing the growing intimacy, was heartbroken. She confronted Eddie, who initially denied any wrongdoing. However, the truth became undeniable. She later recounted in interviews, "I knew something was wrong. You can tell when your husband is in love with someone else." The affair became public in 1959, sending shockwaves through Hollywood. Their clandestine meetings and secret rendezvous were exposed by the press. Headlines screamed about the scandal, and fans were outraged. Eddie Fisher's clean-cut image was shattered. Elizabeth Taylor, already known for her tumultuous personal life, faced harsh criticism and was labeled a homewrecker. One of the most iconic moments of this scandal was when Debbie Reynolds received a phone call from Taylor. In a candid interview, Debbie revealed, "She called me and said, 'Would you please let Eddie come over and comfort me? I'm so lonely.'" This phone call epitomized the complex dynamics between the three, showing the emotional manipulation and vulnerability at play. The affair had severe repercussions for Eddie's career. His wholesome image took a hit, and fans turned against him. NBC canceled The Eddie Fisher Show, and his record sales plummeted. Eddie himself admitted, "I lost everything, my career, my family, my friends, all because I fell in love." Elizabeth faced public backlash too, but her career remained relatively unscathed. Her talent and beauty continued to captivate audiences. She starred in Suddenly last summer in 1959, and her performance received critical acclaim, proving her resilience in the face of personal turmoil. Debbie Reynolds, though devastated, maintained her dignity. She focused on her children, Carrie and Todd, and continued to work in Hollywood. Her strength during this period won her public sympathy and respect, public betrayal and humiliation. When the affair became public knowledge in 1959, Debbie found herself thrust into the unforgiving spotlight. She had been known for her wholesome image and beloved roles in films like Tammy and the Bachelor and The Tender Trap. The news of Eddie's betrayal shattered this image, leaving her to navigate the fallout with grace. In interviews, Debbie later described the experience as devastating and humiliating. She recalled the moment she realized the extent of Eddie and Elizabeth's relationship. "I was at home taking care of our children, and I had to read about it in the newspapers." This public revelation left her feeling betrayed not only by her husband, but also by her best friend. The media frenzy was relentless. Tabloids and newspapers ran headlines that screamed of the scandal. "Eddie leaves Debbie for Liz," and "Debbie's heartbreak betrayed by best friend" were common headlines. Photographers and reporters hounded Debbie, desperate to capture her reaction. Despite the invasive scrutiny, she maintained a dignified silence, refusing to publicly lash out at either Eddie or Elizabeth. Eddie and Elizabeth, meanwhile, faced their own public backlash. Eddie's once thriving career took a severe hit. His wholesome, all-American image was tarnished. Public opinion turned sharply against him, and he struggled to regain his former popularity. Publicly, Debbie refrained from speaking ill of them. She once said, "I don't hate Elizabeth. We were all very young, and things happen." Elizabeth's justification. The world wanted to understand why Elizabeth Taylor betrayed her friend Debbie Reynolds so profoundly. Her justification was rooted in her deep grief and emotional vulnerability after her husband Mike Todd's tragic death. Mike was her great love, and his sudden death left her devastated. She often referred to Mike as the love of her life, and his loss plunged her into deep mourning. During this intense period of grief, Eddie Fisher, already a close friend, became her main source of comfort. Eddie was also grieving for his friend Mike, which strengthened their bond. They spent countless hours together, reminiscing about Mike, and this shared sorrow created a powerful emotional connection. Elizabeth later reflected, "I was so lost after Mike died. Eddie was there for me in a way that no one else could be." Her vulnerability during this time cannot be overstated. She was dealing with the loss of her husband while raising her young daughter, Liza Todd. Eddie's presence provided a semblance of stability and support. In the documentary Liz, the Elizabeth Taylor Story, biographer C. David Heyman explained, "Elizabeth was in a very fragile state. Eddie offered her the comfort and companionship she desperately needed. As their emotional bond deepened, it naturally progressed into a romantic relationship." Elizabeth admitted in later interviews that she didn't set out to hurt Debbie. In a 1964 interview with Life magazine, she said, "I didn't mean to hurt Debbie, but you can't help who you fall in love with." This statement highlighted her belief that her actions were driven by uncontrollable emotions rather than a deliberate intent to betray. She genuinely believed that her grief and need for comfort excused her actions. In her autobiography, she wrote, "I was so consumed by my grief for Mike that I didn't see the full consequences of my actions. I was thinking with my heart, not my head." The divorce fallout. The aftermath of Eddie Fisher's affair with Elizabeth Taylor and the resulting divorce from Debbie Reynolds was nothing short of tumultuous. The public was riveted by the unfolding drama, which played out in headlines and tabloids across the world. She filed for divorce in May 1959, citing mental cruelty. The divorce proceedings were swift, finalizing by the end of that year. Debbie, maintaining her dignity, focused on her children, Carrie and Todd. She later said, I had to be strong for my children. They were my priority, and I needed to create a stable environment for them. The financial and emotional toll on Debbie was significant. She was left to support her family without the stability that Eddie's career had previously provided. Despite the personal turmoil, Debbie continued to work, accepting roles that helped her rebuild her career and provide for her children. She starred in films such as The Gazebo, 1959, and The Pleasure of His Company, 1961, showcasing her resilience and determination. Eddie Fisher's career suffered dramatically. The public backlash against him was severe, and his wholesome image was irreparably damaged. His TV show was canceled, and his record sales plummeted. Reflecting on this period, Eddie later wrote in his autobiography, "I lost everything because I fell in love with Elizabeth. My career, my family, my friends, all gone." The divorce also had a profound impact on the children. Carrie Fisher, who would later become a famous actress and writer, often spoke about the effects of her parents' tumultuous relationship on her upbringing. In her memoir, Wishful Drinking, Carrie described the experience as formative but challenging, noting, "I grew up in the shadow of my parents' scandal. It was a part of who I became." Over time, Debbie's career saw a resurgence. She received an Academy Award nomination for her role in The Unsinkable Molly Brown, 1964, which mirrored her own story of resilience and strength. This role became a symbol of her ability to rise above personal adversity and continue to succeed professionally. Eddie and Elizabeth's relationship, however, did not last. They married in 1959, but the marriage was tumultuous and short-lived. By 1964, Elizabeth had left Eddie for actor Richard Burton, starting yet another high-profile relationship that captured public attention: The Road to Forgiveness. For years, there was little to no contact between Debbie and Elizabeth. The wounds from the betrayal were deep, and the media frenzy that followed only added to the strain. In interviews, Debbie often spoke about the difficulty of moving past such a public and personal betrayal. "It took a long time," she admitted. "I had to heal for myself and for my children." The first step towards reconciliation came in the early 1960s. Despite the pain, Debbie chose to let go of bitterness for the sake of her children. She recognized the importance of setting a positive example of forgiveness and resilience. In a candid interview, she said, "I didn't want to carry that burden of hate. It was important for me to move on and be happy." Elizabeth, for her part, also underwent significant personal growth. After her turbulent marriage with Eddie Fisher ended in 1964, she married Richard Burton, beginning another chapter of her life. Her multiple marriages and personal struggles often kept her in the public eye, but she began to reflect on her past actions. In a 1976 interview, she stated, "I was young and grieving. I made mistakes, and I hurt people I cared about." The turning point in their relationship came in 1966 when Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor found themselves on the same ocean liner, the Queen Elizabeth, and even on the same floor. The encounter was unexpected and initially awkward. Debbie, taking a bold step, sent a letter to Elizabeth's room seeking to make amends. Elizabeth responded positively, suggesting they have dinner together. According to Debbie, "She sent a note back to mine saying that we should have dinner and get this over with and have a good time. And we had a wonderful evening with a lot of laughs." This sincere apology and their shared evening marked the beginning of their reconciliation. This moment of genuine remorse marked the beginning of their reconciliation. Both women had matured and gained perspective over the years. They realized that holding on to the past was detrimental to their well-being. Debbie, who had always valued family and friendship, decided to forgive. "I forgave her because it was the right thing to do. We were both mothers, and we had been friends once," she explained. Their friendship endured until Elizabeth died in 2011. Debbie often spoke of her with affection and respect in her later years. Reflecting on their journey, she once said, "Elizabeth and I went through a lot, but in the end we were friends. That's what mattered." Rekindling of Friendship. Following their unexpected reconciliation on the Queen Elizabeth ocean liner in 1966, Debbie and Elizabeth began to slowly rebuild their friendship. The initial apology from Elizabeth, which Debbie accepted with grace, opened the door for further communication. Over the next few years, they began to reconnect, albeit cautiously at first. Their children played a significant role in this process. Debbie's daughter, Carrie Fisher, and Elizabeth's children, Michael Wilding Jr. and Christopher Wilding, were all part of the same Hollywood social circle. This common ground provided opportunities for them to interact more frequently, and their shared experiences as mothers helped bridge the gap. One notable event that brought them together was a charity function in 1972, where both women were honored guests. They appeared cordial and supportive of each other, a marked difference from the tension that had once existed. This public display of unity was a powerful statement, demonstrating that they were willing to move beyond their past. In 1983, their relationship took a significant step forward when they co-starred in the TV movie These Old Broads. Written by Carrie Fisher, the film was a comedy about aging actresses, and it provided a unique opportunity for Debbie and Elizabeth to work together again. The project was not just a professional collaboration, but also a personal reunion. On set, their interactions were warm and genuine, reflecting a deep-seated mutual respect that had been rekindled. During the promotion of These Old Broads, both actresses spoke openly about their renewed friendship. In a joint interview, Debbie said, "We've had our differences, but time heals all wounds. We are friends again, and that's what matters." Elizabeth echoed these sentiments, acknowledging the pain of the past but emphasizing the importance of forgiveness. Their bond continued to grow stronger over the years. They supported each other's charitable endeavors and were often seen together at public events. Their friendship was no longer about their past grievances, but about celebrating their shared history and mutual respect.